I hold here in my formerly nicotine-stained fingers a copy of The Riverside by Gad Economou. This is his latest book. This is a novel in the form of a memoir of a serial killer. Fairly prolific one. One of the odder things in this book is we do not get our serial killer, his name is Thomas Flower, we do not get his motivations, not clearly anyway. He begins by taking us back to the days before he graduated high school, how he's sick of Denmark. Small town, rural Denmark where he's at. Maybe this gives us a little bit of insight to what this guy's thinking is. So just before he graduates high school, here's what he says to himself. I promised myself I wouldn't become like them. He's referring to everybody else about to graduate high school too, and everybody in general. I refused to become another ghost haunting the streets, trying to survive just for the sake of it. I wouldn't need to lie down for hours at a time just so I could dream away my life and feel happy in fantasies. Instead, I would pursue all my dreams. I'd become someone I'd be proud of, someone I wanted to be. Hence, I wouldn't need dreams because my reality would not be comparable to even the most beautiful dream my brain could conjure. I did do my best to keep that promise. In some ways, I never broke it. He's sitting on the riverside right before he kills his first victim, and he's talking to his friend/mentor, Duck. Duck gives him life advice. And then he describes his friend Duck as waddling around on webbed feet, multicolored feathers. Duck is a duck. So there's a little bit of insight more to Tom Flower's mind, not completely sane. So it's Duck that is encouraging Tom to do these killings. His first victim is drowned in a river. He goes on to be fairly prolific. It is not a spoiler to tell you he kills 5 of them. His discontent with Denmark is that he really hates that place. He doesn't like the law and order of it, the organization, the humdrum life of it. His attitude towards Denmark is this. This occurs later. He's in Greece later on in the book. It's one of his goals in life is to travel the world. And when he's in Greece, he explains to somebody why he didn't like Denmark, why he wants to travel. Here's what he says. I don't know, man. As I said, I'm from Denmark. People there do enjoy freedom and equality. They did fight for it. But at the same time, it turned the new generations into weaklings. They have no aspirations whatsoever. They possess no critical thinking. They just go out on the weekends to drink, then come Monday, they just go back to school, job, whatever. They care about nothing but themselves, all because they grew up in an environment that offered them the freedom to pursue whatever they wanted. And because all roads were wide open, they never had anything to strive for and ended up a spoiled generation. They're not happy, they're merely content. All they know is that the world belongs to them because it's the lie they were born into. So you think, too, maybe some of this guy's motivation is just he's a misanthrope. That doesn't really explain it much either. The 5 people that he kills were all women. So then you might start to think misogyny plays a part in it. But toward the end of the book, he commits a very brutal act of savagery. And while misogyny may have been part of the motivation, it was definitely not the primary motivator. Economou has a master's degree in philosophy of science. And this book is written he writes in a high literary style, almost modernism. And this is form of like a stream of consciousness, but a lot of the stream of consciousness is in dialogue. And this his master's degree, he uses some big words. You're going to get chased to a dictionary a few times in this book. Let me warn you right now. It's a lot of readers I know myself. I like to read new words. I was pulling a dictionary out a lot on this one. He has a girl. It's not a girlfriend, but he thinks she might be playing him as a sucker. She has other boyfriends, and she comes to see him, Thomas, just to talk about her problems. And Duck is telling Thomas, hey, this woman's playing you for a sucker. You need to put her next on your list. And guess what? She ends up victim number 4. Duck really has to push Thomas to do this. Thomas would be remaining lazy without his friend Duck. Anyway, Sophia, she wanted to know about Thomas's past. Why Thomas never talks about his past. And she says, I don't really, it doesn't make sense that you to be leading such a boring life. And here's the reason he says, yeah, I have lived a boring life. Here's what he says. I devoted so much of my life to thinking and analyzing everything that I forgot to live. There you go. We're going to argue with that. He eventually moves to Greece right after he kills her, or soon after that, and he gets a job as a bartender there. One of his regular customers is a veteran police officer, 13 years in the Athens police force. And this is taking place during, you remember, 2008 financial crisis. Greece was hit really hard during that. Protests everywhere, very violent protests. Our main character here, Tom, actually takes part in some of those protests. But anyway, he wants to, the cop who just sits and drinks and talks with him, he's one of these drunk cops, asks him, why you leave Denmark? Why do you want to come to a shithole like Greece? And here's what the cops tells Thomas about Greece, what Greece is really like. It's been like that for decades. This is the cop talking. Hence the situation we're in at the moment, plain and simple. If, back in the 80s, Greeks had more brains and bravado, Greece could have been a serious European country, probably one of the world's strongest economies. Instead, we spent money exorbitantly. Former prime ministers made it rain with foreign money just so they could keep their seats in parliament. And everything was all right. And granted, for a couple of decades it served us well. People thought they were rich. They lived comfortably. Eventually it caught up with us. Come 2008, we got royally fucked because the global recession unearthed all the crimes and mistakes committed. It brought us to today where almost no one with half a brain wants to stay in this hellhole. Those who do are either those who are too deep in the system and thus will not suffer no matter what, and those who have no means to leave the country and are the ones suffering and paying for their parents' mistakes. Thomas's 5th victim happens in Greece. It was a crime of opportunity. All these are walked into, or there's very little foreplanning in this. An opportunity presents itself, and Thomas takes his strike. And right after this victim in Greece, it's in the news, the cops investigate and say, looks like an accident, and then they go on. The cop who is a regular at Thomas's bar, he's angry about the investigation. He wasn't part of the investigation. He says the cops were lazy. They did not investigate that crime well enough, deeply enough. So he starts doing a little sleuthing on his own. And he looks up his bartender's history. He knew the bartender was from a town called Aarhus in Denmark. He does a little investigating and finds out there was some unexplained drownings of women in that town. There are serial killers from. So he goes in there one day. He goes to confront him. And now Thomas has to go on the run. The final act that he does, I'm not going to tell you what it is, that'd be a spoiler alert, is so brutal. It put his victim count way up over the 5 that it had been before he committed that final crime. Very unique book. This is a door stopper, 448 pages. It's going to take you a while to get through it. Plus, I'm getting chased to the dictionary every other page, too. All right? Gad Economou of the Riverside. Check that one out.